Wendy, guess what? Will my brother suddenly come in? Outside the door is the man I've liked for 7 years. And inside the door, the brother of this man is standing behind me, whispering softly to me. I accidentally slept with my childhood friend. It was a beautiful morning. If I hadn't touched the thing next to me, he was still asleep, breathing steadily, his handsome face looking harmless. His curled and long eyelashes, his straight and well-defined nose. I was staring, then he wrapped his long arms around me and pulled me into his arms. My face was against his collarbone. Can I move? I dare not move. Yesterday was a banquet prepared for him. Jackson returned home after finishing his studies, and our group of childhood friends rarely gathered together. I accidentally drank too much. I'm not good at drinking, but I've never been a mess like this before. Should I run? Oh no, I like his brother Johnny, not his brother Jackson. This mistake is huge, really huge. What are you thinking? Jackson woke up, his eyes covered with a thin mist, looking a bit groggy. Seeing that I didn't answer, he reached out and pinched my face. I stared in dissatisfaction. He smiled, then rubbed my nose. Go back to sleep for a while. Can I sleep? I dare not sleep. I'm trying hard to remember what happened yesterday. So, last night, it is as you saw. He pointed to the scattered clothes on the floor. My mind was in a mess. I was drunk, you were drunk, I was not drunk. He propped his head up to look at me, while playing with strands of my hair that fell on the pillow. If I were drunk, nothing would have happened. He corrected his expression. I will take responsibility for you. No! I don't want you to take responsibility. He furrowed his brows, looking puzzled and a bit displeased that this kid has been abroad for several years, and we've only met a few times in these years. It's awkward because it's been a long time since we last met and this thing suddenly happened. If it had happened during our school days, I could have bluffed my way through. But now, I can't figure out what this kid is thinking. I took a deep breath. Did I force you? This kid has always been obedient, and since he dared to openly state that he wasn't drunk, then the fault should not lie with him, but with me. I'm overthinking. He shook his head and then nodded. What does this mean? Yesterday we planned to bring you to a hotel to make do for the night, but as soon as you entered, Mark and the others always thought you liked me, so they didn't stop you, just closed the door and left out. What do you mean I liked him? I don't like him. If it weren't for wanting to see his brother back, then would I have been running to his house every other day? And then? He pointed to his lips. You bit me. I must have been a dog in my past life, and I bit pretty hard. I'll go take a shower to calm down. I opened the blanket and ran out, completely forgetting my current situation. In a moment of panic, I didn't know where to cover, so I shouted at Jackson, turn around. He seemed particularly calm, with a faint smile as if he had seen everything he needed to. Well, yeah. But still. It feels strange. Before yesterday, we had such a pure and innocent friendship. I grabbed his jacket and put it on, then squatted down to find my clothes. Here. I looked up and saw his index finger hooking my clothes. One black and one white, a visually striking contrast. Give it to me. He was very obedient, rolled off the bed. I quickly covered my eyes. Turn around. Jackson didn't listen to me at all. He put the clothes on my shoulder, leaned in at my ear, and said, don't be angry. It's dark in front of me, but my other senses are still clear. His breath tickles my ear. It's a bit itchy. He chuckled, then quickly jumped back into bed. My face was about to explode from embarrassment. I continued to search for other clothes. There wasn't a single piece that I could wear. The dress had a huge rip in it. How desperate must I have been to do something like this? I picked up the pile of cloth. Did you do this? He shook his head. You did it yourself. I can't believe it was me. I sprinted 100 meters to the bathroom with the pile of cloth in my arms. Some memories of last night started to surface in my mind. I never thought that I would make a move on Jackson, and I never imagined that he would cooperate like this. Oh well, this kid has always listened to me. But at that moment yesterday, how could he not resist? How could he? I was immersed in regret and couldn't extricate myself, then heard a knock on the bathroom door. Wendy, I'll go buy you some clothes. Wait a moment, I answered, waiting for the footsteps to fade away. Then quickly called my best friend to discuss a plan. Kathy. I want to die. I really want to die. I rambled on about what had happened with her. She laughed and said, if what you're saying is true, do both brothers want you? Stop talking nonsense. I've liked his brother. I've liked him for 7 years. Do you know what 7 years means? I've endured it all these years. That's real liking. Come on, can one-sided liking really be considered 7 years of yearning? I fell silent, her words were too cutting. She continued, what's more, what are you so shameless for? I don't want to talk about it. Right now I have to draw a clear line with Jackson. Johnny must never find out about this. With his personality, if he knows, then it's like a death sentence for me. I quickly hung up the phone, opened the bathroom door, and standing outside, was the male lead in our little drama. Jackson was holding a paper bag, which should contain the clothes he bought for me. He lowered his head slightly, his bangs covering his forehead, his expression somewhat indiscernible. The air seemed to freeze. He must have heard all my words just now, right? I touched the door handle, hesitated a bit, then spoke. Hi. He raised his head, surprisingly calm. My brother called last night. He must have heard everything I said just now. You answered? He nodded. What did you say? He didn't say anything, just stared at me. I glanced down. Oh no, the towel wasn't covering what it should. Jackson lifted his gaze, his eyes seeming to say something inexplicable. What do you want? Can we talk normally now? I felt guilty. I was in the wrong. I didn't dare to get angry with him. I lowered my head, looking at my toes. He was too calm. If Johnny and I had done something in the morning, he would have immediately cut ties with me. I might have laughed at my misfortune. I slept with the man of my dreams. Maybe my smile was too lascivious, which Jackson didn't like, so he dropped a bomb on me. I told him, you slept. His lips brushed against my ear. Whatever it is, we can discuss it tomorrow. Jackson plays the guitar all year round. His fingertips are calloused, and wherever he touches me feels a bit numb. My whole body felt strange. I couldn't even mourn my unrequited love that ended prematurely. I saw fire ignite from the depths of his eyes, climbing higher and higher, turning the slight upturn of his eyes redder and redder. My heart started racing, even more so than when I first met Johnny. And he didn't hide his gaze. I turned around and rushed back into the bathroom. I should take a shower first. I couldn't even finish my sentence. Not needed clothes? His voice was low and hoarse. A certain memory suddenly flashed through my mind. Too embarrassing. I shouldn't have watched those weird things. If I hadn't watched, then none of this would have happened. Despite the embarrassment, I still needed the clothes. Can't go out without clothes, right? Carefully opening the bathroom door a crack, I reached out for the clothes. When he handed me the bag, his fingers deliberately or unintentionally brushed against my palm. I immediately pulled my hand back, closed the door. Turned on the shower, all in one fluid motion. The heat from my body finally subsided a bit. It was so awkward, but our more than 10 years of friendship couldn't just be thrown away. We are both adults, just buying a couple of sodas. We should still be able to be friends, right? After mentally preparing myself, I turned off the shower and reached into the bag. He not only bought clothes for me, but also for himself. I quickly threw his clothes into the bag. Did he just want to have a shared bath? This thought flashed in my mind, my face once again turning red. I cautiously came out of the bathroom. Jackson looked up, his gaze made me uneasy. He furrowed his brows. The hem of the skirt is a bit short. My face got hot again. I threw the bag at him. Get out. He dodged it, then walked up to me with a smile. Wendy, wait for me to come out. His words sounded like he was about to enter jail. Crafting my own little scheme. Now is the time to run. When else should I? If I don't see you when I come out, I'll tell your mom about what happened yesterday. Such audacity to pull my mom's name as a threat. This little brat really has some nerve. I glared at him fiercely, very dissatisfied. He pinched my face, bypassed me, and entered the bathroom. Can't run now. I'm not his biological mother, and my mom likes those two brothers more than me. Why? Oh, because the two brothers are successful. One has a thriving career, and the other, despite being 3 years younger than me, already has a PhD. I'm just plain Wendy. How can I catch up to them? I sighed. And the little brat in the bathroom shouted, Wendy, help me get the clothes off. I refuse. Then I'll just come out naked. I fiercely stared at him, very displeased. He squeezed my face and slid past me into the bathroom. Can't escape now. I'm not the natural mother. My mom likes them more than me. Why? He laughed, ambling out of the bathroom. Wendy, help me take off the clothes. Refusing. Then I'll come out naked. Under his coercion, I reluctantly picked up the paper bag. The bathroom door opened, and the steam rushed out. His figure was not bad. I belatedly covered my eyes with my hands, hurry and closed the door. Oh, women, yesterday you were clinging to me, but today you put on clothes and act like we don't know each other. Why does this sound so cheesy? Jackson, do you know that your image has collapsed? I couldn't resist stealing a glance at him while he was picking up the bag. He caught me in the act and chuckled, boldly showing off. Do you still want me to do something to you? I quickly turned around. The laughter behind me continued. Standing in the hotel room, my heart was in chaos. Eventually, I couldn't resist and sent him a message, asking him not to tell my mom yet, that I needed some time to calm down before discussing the matter. Then I ran away, as fast as I could. The chat page between me and Jackson remained stuck on the day I sent him the message. He didn't reply. Could he be angry? My behavior of pulling up my pants and running away was quite like that of a scumbag. I felt distracted all week, until my mom called me. Wendy, why aren't you responding to the person I introduced to you the other day? Was I ignoring him? He immediately asked me if, after marriage, I could resign from my job to have a baby, becoming an ordinary housewife. With a monthly income of over $10,000, still below what Johnny earns, where did he get the confidence to support a family? I was being generous by not blocking him. Mom, he's not suitable. Not suitable? Not suitable? Fine. Find me someone more suitable then. I forced a smile. All right, come back this Saturday and chat with Mom. My intuition told me this was a tricky situation, but I couldn't avoid it. On that Saturday, my mom welcomed me with open arms, as if it was not a blind date for me, but her own long-lost love. When she saw me, she quickly headed to the kitchen, leaving me in the living room watching TV. Not long after, the doorbell rang again. I knew it. My mom had taken this blind date setting directly to our home. The visitor outside was Jackson. Why are you here? You told my mom about what happened between us? No wonder the venue is at home. Is my mom implying that Jackson is already considered a son-in-law? What happened? Johnny suddenly appeared from the side. Strikingly tall, his legs were longer than my whole body. It's because of someone, a few days ago. Jackson jokingly covered my mouth with his hand. Don't speak nonsense again. Both of you are here. My mom joyfully welcomed them into the house. Jackson flattered her, saying things like how youthful and radiant she looked. Who would believe that? People don't reverse their aging process, do they? But my mom believed him. Whatever Jackson says, even if he says the sky will fall today, she would believe him. After a few chats, my mom said, You guys sit down first, I'll go check on the food in the pot. I followed her to the kitchen. Mom, what's the real intention behind calling both of them over here? She paused in washing the vegetables. Take a look at yourself. I followed her gaze and looked down. What's wrong with me? Are you even worthy of it? It seemed my mom didn't know the fact that I had already slept with Jackson. Oh well, I just wanted them to come home for dinner, but my mom seemed to regard Jackson as a potential son-in-law. My mom sent me out of the kitchen, and as fate would have it, Johnny rolled up his sleeves and came in. Auntie, let me help you out. Who wouldn't like a man like this? Mature, successful, and can even cook. I walked back to the living room, and Jackson was smiling mysteriously at me. I felt a bit flustered, so I blurted out, Oh, my mom asked me to go shopping with her. He stood up, towering over me. Wendy, you really dared to run away that day. I bowed my head, unable to move a muscle. He leaned in, locking eyes with me. Are you calm now? Not really calm. He gave a cold snort, grabbed my hand, and walked into my bedroom in big strides, closing the door behind us. If I'm not taking responsibility, then what do you plan to do? This cunning guy actually threw the problem back at me. Let's just pretend nothing happened. Before that day, we had pure friendship, as innocent as it could be. It felt awkward for something to change all of a sudden when we had grown up together. I couldn't accept it. Besides, Jackson has someone he likes. He went abroad for her years ago. Although Selena had gotten married and was living a carefree life overseas, it didn't stop him from cherishing a trace of unrequited love for her. There was an accidental incident that night, but we are all adults, so let's move on. I truly don't believe that after that one night, he suddenly fell for me. Jackson asked me, truthfully? I nodded. Without looking up at him, I didn't know what expression he wore, but perhaps he felt relieved. True to form, he chuckled. So, are you going to keep your promise from that day? I said so many things that day. What man, you have successfully caught my attention. I want to give you the world, you protect the world, I protect you. Which one was it? He wouldn't actually expect me to give him the world, right? I can't exactly provide that. I lifted my head, feeling a bit cautious. What did I say? You said you want me to be your only one, to hold you every night and wake up in your arms. How corny. I couldn't understand how Jackson could say such disgusting things with the calmest tone. I must have made a strange face. Jackson tapped my head. Stop playing around, let me talk seriously. Just as he was about to speak, there was a knock on the door. Johnny called out, "Dinner's ready." I responded, and Jackson handed me a tissue, gently tapping my back as I choked on the water I had just drunk. His voice was soft. Feeling better now? My mom watched us and saw nothing wrong, praising him for being caring, saying any woman who becomes his girlfriend would be lucky. Jackson graciously accepted her praise, while Johnny seemed to observe us with hidden thoughts. If I was upset earlier, now I just felt embarrassed. Johnny must know about the relationship between Jackson and me, but I had been his fangirl since I was little. Yet somehow, I had ended up with his brother. My mom cleared her throat. This time I invited you guys over because there's something I need your help with. I sipped the soup silently. You know, Wendy's dad was most worried about her lifelong choice. Every time Mom pressured me about marriage, she dragged my dad into it. I've introduced everyone I could over the past few years, none of them worked out. You guys know many people. Mom, enough. My mom completely ignored me, continuing, see if there's anyone suitable around you to introduce to her. I drank a sip of water indignantly. You know, Wendy said she'd bring someone back last time, but within 3 months, oh, poof, vanished. Selena already has children and a husband, but she doesn't even have a partner. Bringing up Selena, I sneakily glanced at Jackson. Surprisingly unfazed, I understood. My tears were only flowing inside. Perhaps to appease my mom or with an underlying message. Johnny insisted, I'll do my best. See if there's anyone suitable around. Wasn't Jackson beside him? He probably didn't quite understand why Jackson and I were having a clandestine affair. Only then was my mom satisfied. Jackson, are you planning to settle down in Los Angeles? Have you found a place to live? Your parents are really something, moving out to the outskirts to retire and selling the house in the city. Johnny doesn't even work around here. Now that you've come back, there's no place for you to stay. Not yet. My gut feeling was not good. Sure enough, my mom was already setting traps for me. Wendy's house is available for rent recently, go take a look. If it's suitable, you can take care of her, and then I'll be at ease. Mom, isn't that a bit excessive? Anyway, your house is going to be rented out to those undesirables outside, so why not just let Jackson stay? But I'm looking for a girl to stay there. Jackson, without hesitation, agreed. After dinner, I went to wash the dishes, and the three of them were chatting happily in the living room, looking like a mother and her 2 sons. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. Wendy, don't you want to know who my brother is thinking about? Jackson stood behind me, so close that when I flinched, the plate in my hand dropped. He caught the plate, placed it in the sink, and casually rolled up my sleeves. But whether it was intentional or not, his pinky always managed to touch my skin, sending shivers down my spine. He leaned in close to my ear and whispered, "You're making so much noise. My brother will hear." The words sounded strange to me. Don't stand so close. I nudged him with my elbow. Why are you so shy all of a sudden? What about that night? I cut him off. Can you stop bringing that up all the time? I turned around and saw Johnny standing at the kitchen door. He calmly took a can of tea leaves from the cabinet and walked out of the kitchen. Jackson shrugged. My brother's intention is clear, let's continue. I suddenly felt aggrieved. I didn't understand why he kept bringing up that night. He clearly liked someone else. He chased after her to France, only returning after she got married and had a child, so why did he still flirt with me? I stomped on his foot hard, ran out of the kitchen, grabbed my bag, and left. My mom was puzzled, and Jackson said, "Auntie, I made Wendy angry, I'll go and coax her back." Oh, this child, even at this age, still has such a temper. The elevator door was about to close, but he blocked it with his hand. Jackson stepped in, and I turned away, choosing to ignore him. He came close to me, using his finger to wipe away a tear from my eye. "Why are you crying?" I closed my eyes, not wanting to see the mockery in his eyes. Wendy, do you really like my brother that much? Do you like him so much that you've been silent for 7 years out of fear of rejection? His tone had a hint of frustration. I didn't even scold him, so why was he upset? Why won't you look at me? My heart skipped a beat, realizing what he meant. Jackson, if you want to compete with your brother, do it properly. Don't seek validation from me. I said without looking at him, then walked out of the elevator. In fact, Jackson was wrong. There were times when I was even more cowardly. It was never Johnny I liked, it was Jackson. Always, I said I liked Johnny, that I had been silent for 7 years just to tell him. Even the phone call with Kathy that morning was deliberate. I didn't want to burden him, didn't want to use that absurd night to force him into responsibility. After all, he never liked me. And using this method to protect my fragile self-esteem, I couldn't remember when I started to like him. Perhaps it was when my mom punished me and he sat beside me reading stories. Or when he stood up to those bullies for me. Or when he stood on the platform giving speeches, the morning sun shining on his face, making him shine. Girls my age usually like older guys or their peers, but I liked this little brat. He was a genius, 3 years younger than me. From elementary to junior high, spanning 3 grades, and finally, in high school, we were in the same class. I had worked hard to get into the advanced class, and he effortlessly got in. Our families lived opposite each other. His parents worried he would be bullied due to his age, so I walked to and from school with him every day. Selena was my best friend, always by my side, forming a triangle with us naturally. The math teacher said triangles were the most stable shapes. I watched as they grew closer and closer. However, Jackson always seemed indifferent towards me. It was a movie with 3 main characters, yet I never had a name. Selena was beautiful, the class flower. Jackson, a charismatic figure since day one, handsome and intelligent. People thought they were a perfect match. I had gained weight due to the stress of academics. Compared to Selena, I felt like I was light years behind. She was the star, and I was the shadow. But then, Selena fell in love with Peter, the jock from the neighboring class. He was sunny, with a tan complexion, shining on the basketball court. During their courtship, Selena would always drag me to cheer for him after school. Jackson had to wait for us in the classroom while doing his homework. During the second half, Selena blinked and said, "Wendy, can you go buy a bottle of water for me?" Pointing to Peter on the court, she gestured towards the group of fangirls on the sidelines waiting for me. Sisters before misters, so I got up and headed to the convenience store. Looking towards the teaching building, I saw Jackson standing by the window, watching the game. He seemed a bit down lately. I tried to show understanding, adding a hint of sympathy in my gaze, which made me feel even more melancholic. Earlier that morning, he had casually asked, "Do girls like playing basketball?" But growing up together, I could read him like an open book. I could see that he cared. I shrugged, offering some comfort. "Not necessarily, some like this type, others like that type. Some might like this one now, and a different one next time." I thought it was a decent response, maybe it would give him some hope, but he seemed even more despondent. I chose to stay silent. As I picked out ice cream, Selena appeared behind me. "Wendy, you're so slow, the game's over." We quickly paid and headed back. The basketball court was chaotic. Jackson and Peter were fighting. Peter had the upper hand until Selena arrived, then Jackson managed to turn the tables, raining down blows. Jackson, although younger than Peter, had been practicing taekwondo from a young age. His punches were solid, overwhelming for anyone. Selena was aware of this and immediately ran over, yelling, "Stop fighting. Stop it." Jackson paused, looked at her and then at me, before getting off Peter and saying, "Don't let me hear you say that again." With that, he walked away. Selena stood there, unsure whether to chase after Jackson or check on Peter, so I placed the water on the ground and said, "I'll go and check on Jackson." This seemed to ease her anxiety, and she went over to Peter. Jackson walked swiftly, and I had to run to catch up with him. I grabbed his arm, but he shook free. My heart raced, but I maintained composure, asking, "Is your hand hurting?" Finally, he stopped and turned to me, "Why are you following me? Didn't you enjoy being with them? Why bother coming to me?" As we walked on, we found ourselves in the school's underground parking lot, his face half hidden in shadows, making it hard to decipher his expression. But I was sure he was feeling upset. Perhaps he wanted Selena to chase after him? But since I came instead, he was unhappy. I felt sorrow too, unable to find the right words. I could only ask, Jackson, shall we go home? He moved his lips as if wanting to say something else. I waited for his response, but in the end, he just said, let's go. It was a rare occasion, just the two of us going home together. I remember the beautiful sunset that day, the long shadows we cast. After that day's parting, I and Jackson never exchanged another word. But the next encounter was inevitable. Selena went back to her home country. Her moonlight returned. No, I hadn't taken her place yet. Even if this were a romantic drama, I wasn't even a supporting actress, just a passerby. This time, Selena came back pregnant, choosing a villa on the outskirts for a gathering that it was on a weekend. The thought of Jackson made me want to back out, but Selena didn't give me that option. She directly called for me, practically dragging me to her car. As Mark drove us, he asked, what's going on between you and Jackson? Are you having a disagreement? I remained silent. You know Jackson's personality, he talks tough but is soft-hearted inside. Just say a few comforting words to him, and that should do it. Why should I comfort him? I retorted, leaving Mark speechless. I remembered something then. How did he know about my Cold War with Jackson? But after my earlier tone, I felt awkward to ask him again. Finally arrived at the location of the villa. The house is at the foot of the mountain. She was sitting on a rocking chair, excitedly waving at me when I got out of the car. She was wearing a loose white dress, her belly already showing signs of pregnancy, her face adorned with exquisite makeup. It was clear she was doing well. Beside her, Jackson was low-headedly removing cherry pits, the table already filled with a plate full of cherry flesh. Selena likes cherries. So do I. But he has never done this specifically for me. I am always the afterthought. Which room is mine? Wendy, let me take you. Selena intimately linked her arm with mine. I purposely saved a room for you. It has a beautiful view of the mountains. Jackson stood up. You're not available, I will take her. Look, he is almost treating her like a princess. Okay, you go with Wendy. Selena didn't insist either, eating cherry flesh and instructing me. Oh Wendy, remember to look at the box on the table. That's the gift I specifically brought for you. I nodded silently and followed behind Jackson. When we reached the stairs, Jackson turned to look at me. The box is for you. It's foolish not to use a helper. He carried the box upstairs with ease. I just regretted not packing heavier items to shake some sense into him. He stopped at the door of the room, turned to me, seeming to have something to say. I took my things from his hands, pushed the door open and entered, then slammed the door shut. At this moment, Jackson must be stomping his feet outside. Just the thought of that scene lifted my spirits a bit. I do like him, but we are different. After a short rest, Selena suggested that we all go for a walk on the mountain, saying there is a reservoir halfway up the mountain where we could go fishing. The moment I heard fishing, I got excited. After getting fishing rods from the owner, we all headed up the mountain. The scenery on the mountain was nice. Selena was not walking fast, so we took it as a leisurely walk, accompanying her as we strolled. Jackson walked behind us with the fishing rod, chatting and laughing with the others. He was always surrounded by people. I felt a pang of jealousy. Selena glanced back at him, then at me. Are you two fighting again? I didn't say anything. How can you two still fight? You're both grown-ups now. I suddenly felt annoyed. Jackson has never said harsh words to Selena, he can't bear to. I casually responded to her, then walked ahead on my own. Finally, we reached the reservoir. I found a good spot, sat down, and started fishing. Selena didn't like fishing, so after a while, she pulled Mark and a few others to a nearby orchard. It became quiet around me. Wait, why is Jackson getting closer and closer to me? Wasn't he just under that tree a moment ago, and then he slapped me? There was a mosquito. I looked at the handprint on my arm and fell into contemplation. He definitely did it on purpose. Just because this morning I gave him a cold shoulder. I was contemplating whether to throw a left punch first or a right punch when the fishing rod in my hand suddenly moved. Enraged, I jerked the rod upwards fiercely. The movement was too big, the fish got away, the hook spinning in the air a few times before landing on my head. Move. He didn't say it, but I dared not move. I saw the smirk on his face. He was mocking me. His finger landed on my forehead, the sunlight filtered through the trees and shone on his Adam's apple. I blushed. I have kissed this spot before. Images from that night began playing automatically in my mind. I only remembered parts of it, but enough to savor. My face turned red. It's tricky, don't move. He moved a little closer, our noses almost touching his clothes. He smelled good, like the scent of grass after rain. My heart raced, as if it was about to burst out. And it felt like a long time before he said, "Okay." When I lifted my head, he was looking at me with a half smile. I felt like he had seen through my thoughts, quickly took a few steps back. His expression turned to panic. "Be careful." I stepped on nothing and fell into the water. Don't ask, trouble always finds me when Jackson is around. Splashes of water flew around, he jumped in too. I popped my head out of the water, silently cursing, "Jackson is a moron." The water only reached my neck. He wrapped his arms around my waist and asked, "Are you okay, Wendy?" I glared at him, not satisfied, dove back into the water, took a big gulp, then resurfaced and spat it all onto his face. A droplet of water rolled down from his chin, landing on his chest. "Wendy!" I finally saw his face change, so I quickly swam to the shore, climbing up using the rocks. Before I could reach the top, he grabbed my clothes to pull me down. Just then, Selena and the others returned, witnessing me and Jackson frolicking in the water. I wished I could bury my head in the water. Mark chuckled mischievously, "You two sure know how to play." I rolled my eyes, reaching out my hand to him for help up. He glanced at Jackson and didn't move. Just as I was about to scold him, I was suddenly lifted up in his arms. I could feel it. I rubbed against Jackson's chest. People on the shore coughed a few times and scattered. I hung my head, not wanting anyone to see my blushing face. "Wendy, wait for me." I almost sprinted down the mountain. Back at the villa, I took a hot bath, didn't even eat dinner. Mainly, I didn't want to see Jackson, didn't want to give him a chance to ridicule me for being foolish. Let him apologize sincerely to me first, then I'll talk to him. I finished a large plate of cherries, then lay in bed using my phone. Not long after, the lights suddenly went out. Screams echoed, and I turned on my phone's flashlight, cautiously walking out of the room. Everyone had gathered in the living room. The nearby construction accidentally cut off the power cable. The owner said it should be back later in the night. Jackson's voice came from behind me. I moved aside. He grabbed my arm. "Wendy, I need to talk to you. I have nothing to say to you." I was not in a good mood, brushed him off. Someone suggested playing a game. Everyone agreed enthusiastically, sitting on the blankets, playing Texas Hold'em, Uno, and finally someone proposed Truth or Dare. My memory of Truth or Dare is not good. It was because of that one game of Truth or Dare that I was forced to like Johnny for 7 years. It was at our graduation party, the whole class gathered at a KTV, singing and playing games. The rules were simple: roll the dice, the person with the lowest score had to play Truth or Dare. Throughout the game, my mind was not in it because the person I was prepared to confess to never showed up. Several pairs of couples had already formed in the class next door last night. I thought I should give my youth a resolution, even though not even Jackson knew I liked him, let alone anyone else. "Wendy, it's your turn this time." I rolled a 1. I looked at my phone, it was Jackson's turn. I chose Truth. "Who do you like?" I took a deep breath. "Jay." Someone entered through the door, not Jackson. More like, Jackson was the one who opened it, but it was Selena who came in. Jackson stood behind her, the two of them were talking and laughing, they looked quite compatible. No wonder Jackson didn't come with me, he was busy picking up Selena. I could sense the timing was right today, how could he not see it? Maybe they were already together. The classmates started cheering. "Wendy, you like Jackson, don't you?" "I knew it. You grew up together, how can I not believe something was going on between you two?" Jackson seemed puzzled, his lips pursed tightly. He probably didn't like everyone making a joke out of us. "No, I don't like him, I didn't look at him, I like Johnny, Jackson's brother, his actual brother." The room fell silent. I didn't know if it was just my imagination, but I saw a hint of sadness in his eyes. When I looked again, Selena had already pulled him to sit down, and he looked unfazed. A girl next to me gossiped, "What kind of person is Jackson's brother?" I thought for a moment, mature, responsible, gentle, versatile, as if nothing can ever faze him. I worked hard to maintain what little self-esteem I had left. Selena and Jackson sat very close, while between him and me, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. "Wendy, you keep your feelings well hidden," he remarked. I smiled without saying a word. "If you truly like him, you should make your move earlier, or else." His words stabbed me in the heart. I cut him off. I know. I'm planning to attend college in the city where he is. I lied a bit too well, even I began to believe it. Later on, I did go to the city where Johnny was. And he and Selena went to New York. It's a city Selena always wanted to visit, we all knew that. And on that night, my youth had a bad ending. This time, Jackson lost before me. Jackson, it's your turn. Jackson, your question. Mark said, what do you most want to say to someone here? Jackson sat across from me, with no flashlight in his hand, his whole face hidden in the darkness, with only his eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight on the table. He seemed to glance at me, but it seemed like he was looking at Selena beside me. He was silent for a long time, so long that Mark joked about changing the question. Finally, he spoke, and I watched his lips move. There was a moment where I could hardly hear his voice. I have liked you for a very long time, he said to Selena. I thought I could handle anything, but with you, I felt countless defeats. Yes, Selena had been through all the suitable options around her, but she decided to let this fish go. Last Christmas Eve, I missed you a lot. I wanted to hear your voice. But I heard that you were doing well, being taken care of. I thought about it and ended up sending just one WeChat message. I greeted everyone just to be able to send that message to you. How dare he contact me that day? I was just a tool for him. And there I was, chatting happily with him. His voice was very low, as if his throat was blocked, and even until today, that longing still emerged at all times. Until this moment, we were so close, yet I wanted you more than ever. Me too, I said silently in my heart. After Jackson's passionate confession, everyone started cheering madly. Just get together. Be together. Be bold. Say the name. Their eyes shifted back and forth between me and him. But only I knew, I was just a tool, a shield. After all, liking a married woman was not something honorable. But he could do it. I raised my hands and said, it's not me, stop guessing, I have someone I like. Jackson seemed to smile a bit, mocking me for still waiting even though I knew Johnny didn't like me. What right did he have to mock me? I got up, suddenly, feeling tired. I'm going to bed, you guys continue, I said. How could I possibly sleep? I couldn't sleep at all. I lay on the bed, reminiscing about my lost youth. He really shouldn't have come back. His return only made everything chaotic. In a haze, a knock on the door sounded, steady and persistent. Who is it? I asked. It's me, he replied. Still half asleep, I opened the door without realizing who was outside. It was Jackson. His eyes seemed red, illuminated by the moonlight, making him look especially desolate. Angrily, I asked, what are you doing? He didn't answer, instead he draped a coat over me and then lifted me up. Jackson. What are you doing? Let it go, I protested. He paid no attention to me, walking downstairs quickly. Let me go. I exclaimed, but he ignored me. In frustration, I bit his arm. He winced, but didn't let go. It was only when I tasted the blood in my mouth that I reluctantly released his arm. Jackson must have gone mad. It seemed that Selena had said something to hurt him, prompting him to act this way with me. He opened the car door and pushed me into the passenger seat. As the car started, a golden light pierced through the thick night, illuminating the silent woods. Glancing at Jackson in the driver's seat, I saw his pursed lips, his face pale, but his eyes were bloodshot, as if he hadn't slept all night. Without shoes, I tucked my feet into the coat, shivering. He stopped the car by the roadside and grabbed a blanket from the back seat to cover me. He was such a gentle person, but most of his gentleness had been given to others. I could sense that, and it was hard to pull away. Why didn't Selena like him? At that moment, I felt so pitiful, wishing Selena could like him and the person I liked could have a sweet love. But at the same time, I was grateful that Selena married someone else, giving me a chance at least. The car descended the mountain, passing through numerous streets until it reached the University of California. My mom used to run a small restaurant here, and Jackson and I had roamed every corner of the university. His parents were busy working, Johnny was focused on college exams, and Jackson, this little brat, had no one to care for him. Feeling sorry for him, my mom brought him to the restaurant. That's where our friendship began. We once lay on the grass at the University of California, promising to be each other's best friends. Jackson parked the car by the roadside. So, what are we going to do? I asked. Well, let's just wait, he replied. Despite what he said, I fell asleep. I slept soundly until Jackson shook me awake. Opening my eyes, I saw Johnny hugging a girl, and she quickly kissed him before running into the campus. I allowed myself a moment to wallow in my heartbreak, comforted by Kathy, burping from the alcohol, crying that summer had passed, and I could no longer hold him close. I lost control, nearly dragging down her younger brother, desperate to sing for myself. In the end, through song after song, my eyes were swollen from crying. When I woke up, I found myself lying on the couch in the living room, accidentally crushing her brother sitting next to me. His face turned red from being squished, and I joked, "What are you doing? I don't like little boys like you." Afterwards, I went to take a shower and then retreated to my room. Wendy cannot be so easily frightened. He was wearing a yellow jersey, showing off his well-defined biceps, and as he played, he lifted his jersey to wipe the sweat off his forehead, revealing a large section of abdominal muscles. I blushed at the memory of that night. It was just too much. Wendy, are you awake? After the game, Jackson saw me, ran over with an expression of joy on his face, and said, "Wendy, why are you here? Are you here to see me? But aren't we still in a Cold War?" What did he mean by this? I took a step back, creating some distance between us, and replied, "No, I'm here to see my boyfriend." His ears turned red, he unconsciously turned his head away, and said, "Oh, to see me." It seemed like Jackson was up to something. I ignored him and waved to Dino behind him, saying, "Dino, come over here." Jackson's smile froze. Dino didn't look any better than him, hesitating as he looked at me. But before he could react, I stepped forward and hugged his arm, smiling brightly, and said, "Let me introduce you, this is my boyfriend." I pinched him in secret, and he quickly understood my meaning, nodding, "Mr. Jackson, do you know my girlfriend?" Jackson stared at me, his eyes swirling with emotions, and finally said, "Not only do I know her very well." Dino's questioning gaze kept shifting between me and Jackson. I pulled his arm and said, "Let's go, Dino. I'll take you out for some good food today." I took the opportunity to playfully pinch his face, saying, "My Dino, you've gotten so thin from studying." Dino looked slightly horrified. Feeling good, I turned to Jackson and said, "Well, Mr. Jackson, we're going to head out now. Goodbye." He just watched me with no expression on his face. I quickly pulled Dino away. Sitting in the fried chicken shop, I received a message from an unknown number. "Wendy, you're really something. Getting love letters while in a relationship." I typed quickly, "As long as I take good care of myself, my husband is still working hard towards his exams." After sending this message, I blocked that number as well. Dino witnessed all of this and looked at me hesitantly, asking, "Wendy, is Mr. Jackson the person you love but can't have? What did Kathy tell him?" I replied firmly, "It's adult matters, don't ask. Today's meal is on me, thank you for helping out. If you're interested, you can try again with him. I think he might like you a little bit. Just because you glanced at him, you think you know everything. You know nothing." I interrupted him, feeling tired. He bluntly exposed me, "Your fries have turned into mashed potatoes from all the playing." I felt embarrassed and put the fries down. I returned to my normal life. After that, I never received any more box meals or letters. One day at noon, during my break at work, I received a message from an unknown number. "Wendy, I need to tell you something, don't be angry." I knew it was Jackson. Ignoring him, he sent over a picture directly, showing Dino and a girl's silhouette, the girl in a light green dress. They were standing very close to each other. Afraid that I wouldn't recognize the ambiguous situation between them, Jackson even demonstrated his subpar Photoshop skills, drawing a circle of little red hearts around their silhouette. Dino has a girlfriend. I needed to immediately tell Kathy this important piece of information. "Wendy, younger people aren't reliable, not like me." Ignoring his comment, he continued his monologue. I finally replied to him, "Jackson, as a teacher, can you stop acting like a pervert and secretly filming students? I'm doing this for your own good. Do you need me with you? I'm pretty good at comforting people. In the future, don't go for university students who haven't entered society yet, they lack experience and are easily tempted." Jackson really had a way with words. Is Selena leaving such a big impact on him? I sighed, "Jackson, take care of yourself." He never messaged me back. I couldn't understand why he was so eager to sabotage my relationships. Was Jackson unable to see me happy? Late at night, a knocking sound came from outside. "Dino, why didn't you bring your keys again?" Standing at the door was Jackson. "What are you doing here?" I blocked the doorway, but he pushed his way in without giving me a chance to refuse. Wendy, break up with him. I furrowed my brows in confusion. If you don't, he will definitely fail my final exam. Jackson, don't be so childish. He stared at me, and I didn't back down, glaring back at him. Wendy, sometimes I wonder, is your heart made of stone? What makes you think I like Selena? His dark eyes accused me with every word. Why? Because he treats Selena so well. I pushed him away, because he's good to Selena? I made him keep his distance. Jackson smirked and pressed me against the door. His breath reeked of alcohol. Are you drunk? Not drunk. He held my hand. If I were drunk, things would be different. He smiled mysteriously, and I couldn't resist him. He leaned in, resting his chin on my shoulder, his warm breath on my skin. Wendy, I like you. It's always been you that I like, do you know that? In my mind, the phrase Wendy, I like you echoed. Eventually, he bit my shoulder, initially seeming like an act of venting his frustration, but later it felt intentional, provocative yet not painful. I pushed him away, then grabbed his collar and pulled him back, biting him back without holding back. He gasped, pinching me gently and speaking in a low, hoarse voice, easy. The situation was getting steamy as he continued to cuddle and nibble, from the hallway to the living room, then to the bedroom. He acted like he had never seen a woman before in his life. As it came to a climax, I tried to stop. You should go, Dino will be back soon. He won't be back. He buried his face in my neck, affirming, he won't be back. I softly agreed. Do you really like him? Why don't you like me anymore? He looked up at me with a hurt tone. You said you liked older people. I studied for so long, learned to be a composed adult. Do you know how jealous I am of Johnny? Why wasn't I born before you? Why am I younger than you? Why does he get your affection? Why? Why? He repeated those 3 words several times. I reached out to touch his face, wanting to say that it wasn't true, that I had never liked anyone else. But before I could say the words, a thunderous roar outside split the thick black night. In that moment, I started crying. A sense of immense satisfaction filled my chest. Feeling the wetness, he seemed puzzled. I'll go out, don't cry. I hugged his neck, and things spiraled out of control. After being tossed and turned by Jackson all night, I got very little sleep. Early in the morning, Jackson woke up. Half asleep, I stopped him. Don't move. He pulled me close, kissing my cheek. My voice was hoarse. What time is it? 7:30. I struggled to get up, but he held me back. Mr. Jackson doesn't have morning classes and can rest, but as a white-collar worker, I have to go to work. He kissed my forehead. Don't go, I'll support you. I obediently nodded. Okay. Then I'll use your money to take care of my little babe. He squinted, looking serious. Say that again? I repeated myself, but with a bad feeling about it. Sure enough. Wendy, you're heartless. Here we go again. His eyes turned red, his movements fast and precise. The result of resisting was that I did indeed not go to work. The culprit was smug, making breakfast for me and spewing nauseating sweet talk. Wendy, I wish I could tie you to me every day. After saying that, he happily hummed a tune. After breakfast was ready, he didn't just feed me, he wanted to spoon feed me. And on top of that, he hugged me while feeding me. Could he be any more unbearable? Wendy, don't you think we're exciting right now? I wanted to pour the soup over his head. Jackson, have some moral standards, will you? He shook his head nonsensically. As long as you like it, I don't mind being your lover. The next day, he went to find Dino and emotionally recounted our youthful days together. Dino, that guy was truly my good brother. Shortly after Jackson visited him, he covertly called me. Jackson's voice came through the line, saying, We grew up together from childhood, there's no one in the world more suited for each other than us. Let her go, I don't want to fight with my student. Dino replied, Mr. Jackson, you should tell her these things. Jackson coldly snorted and seemed to leave. These actions were unlike his usual self. But maybe, this was the real him. Not long after, Jackson returned. Wendy, Dino indirectly told me his thoughts. Eating the tiramisu he bought. Ha! His expression seemed especially fond. You know, these kids, they have no sense of responsibility, unlike me. I interrupted his self-praise. So, he wants me to be your boyfriend. How come this is different from what I heard? He looked at me, his eyes deep. I didn't flinch, holding his gaze. Instead, he threw a tantrum, pounced on me, saying, I don't care, you have to break up with him. I want to be your only one. Now. Immediately. Call him and say bye-bye. We're not even together, so where does the breakup come from? I knew you were just trying to make me mad. He nudged me from my embrace, then sent him away. I'm moving in. Jackson, behave yourself, I introduced Jackson to my mom. Cautiously, as if sneaking around. As soon as we reached the door, I distanced myself from him. Wendy, I'll talk to your aunt nicely, don't worry. My mom was still talking about finding a partner for Jackson, completely unaware that I had taken the lead. The door opened, and I stopped my wild thoughts, quickly letting go of Jackson's hand. Jackson, been busy lately? When my mom turned away, he held my hand. I gave him a warning look, indicating he should tone it down. He pouted, looking displeased. I furrowed my brows and mouthed to him, later tonight. He let go of my hand, looking very satisfied. My mom didn't know anything. After a few exchanges, she went busy in the kitchen. Jackson, you know, whatever I ask him not to do, he insists on doing it. He dragged me into my room. How pretty Wendy's hands are. Did he mean what I thought? He nodded and kissed the back of my hand. I reluctantly obeyed. Who asked me to spoil him? Feeling playful, a knocking sound interrupted us. Hey, what are you two hiding in the room for? Dinner's ready. My mom turned the doorknob, but didn't enter. Come out now. I sensed a change, raising my eyebrows. Jackson looked at me in a pitiful way. I'm so sad, what about us in the future? He bit my face. Wendy. Spare me, you're the best at this. He seemed satisfied only after smearing my face with kisses and adjusting his clothes. We sat facing each other in the dining room. My mom avoided mentioning what just happened and instead chatted about random things with Jackson. Taking advantage of Jackson going downstairs to buy fruits, I couldn't help but ask my mom, aren't you surprised at all? Your little thoughts, how can I not know? My mom laughed, munching on snacks. Jackson's little thoughts, his mom knows too, you know, Mom, if you had just hinted at it. I wouldn't have been single for so long. These things depend on fate. If it's meant to be, it will happen. If you miss it, it's not meant to be. I was speechless. But his mom isn't worried? Worried about what? She's just waiting for the day Jackson brings you home. He's stubborn like his dad. Once he decides on someone, it doesn't change. And what about me? My mom glanced at me. Wendy, once you met Jackson, could you even look at anyone else? Just as I was about to ask more, she added, that day I invited him over for dinner. You think I had nothing else to do? But his mom is right too. Jackson gets all timid when he comes here. She's been telling him to hurry up and marry you since ages, but he insists on waiting until graduation. I didn't know my mom and his were pulling strings to match us up. Those blind dates I had, not one was satisfactory. Even if there was, they all paled in comparison to Jackson. Wendy. The longer the time, the more mature one becomes. It's good that you both like each other, but if you're together at the wrong time, that bit of liking will wear thin with time. Now that you're all grown up, you know it's not easy to be together, that's why you cherish each other more. My mom patted my hand. There's no should or shouldn't, right or wrong, all is just right. Why hasn't Jackson come up yet? Wendy, go downstairs and check. She noticed I wasn't focused and urged me to go. I'll go see. As I approached the entrance to change my shoes, I looked up to see her wiping her eyes. Finally, I couldn't hold back and hugged her. Mom, I will be happy. I will definitely be very happy, as long as he's with me.